I'm Danny Reyes, 26 years old. The day my mom laughed at my janitor money, she made me eat dinner at the folding table in the kitchen because my brother, Marcus, had friends coming over from his law program. She said my mop bucket smell would ruin the vibe. She said I could clean, but I couldn't sit. She said Marcus was going places and I was stuck wiping other people's footprints. They thought I would get embarrassed and quit. They thought I would beg for approval. They thought I would stay small. Instead, I kept the only thing they couldn't mock: numbers. 5 years later, my brother walked into a glass skyscraper to meet the owner who could save his career. He dropped his briefcase when he saw me in the executive chair. Because the building wasn't owned by a man in a suit. It was owned by me. My mother used to talk about success like it was a sound you could hear: a crisp click of heels on marble, a briefcase latch snapping shut, the soft throat clearing before someone said, "Counselor." She didn't need to see it to worship it. She could smell prestige the way some people smell rain. What she couldn't smell, apparently, was bleach. My first job after community college was nights at Valenrow Plaza, a midtown office tower with a lobby that pretended it was a hotel. Polished stone, a chandelier that looked like a frozen firework, security guards with earpieces who acted like they were protecting state secrets instead of a smoothie shop and a bank branch. I cleaned it. I learned the building by touch. Which tile liked to catch grime? Which door handle was loose? Which executive suite had a coffee machine that leaked and left a slow brown scar down the cabinet? My mom said janitor like it was a diagnosis. She didn't say it loudly the first time. She said it with pity. "Oh, Danny, you're still young. You can do something else." The second time, pity had become amusement. "So, what do you do now? Still mopping?" The third time, when Marcus came home with his acceptance letter to Westbrook School of Law, my mom stopped pretending she wasn't comparing us. She taped his letter on the fridge like a trophy. Then she looked at me with my uniform shirt folded over my arm, my hands smelling faintly of lemon disinfectant, and said, "At least one of my kids is going to have a real career." Marcus smirked because smirking was easier than gratitude. He was 23 then, already practicing his handshake in the mirror. He'd mastered the look that said, "I'm listening, but I'm also judging you." I wasn't mad at him for being smart. I was mad at him for letting her turn my work into a punchline. But anger is expensive. You can spend it and have nothing to show, or you can invest it. I chose the second. I didn't correct my mother when she called me a janitor. I didn't tell her I was also a bookkeeper on the side, picking up weekend gigs for small businesses that couldn't afford an accountant. I didn't tell her I'd asked my supervisor at Valenrow Plaza for extra shifts and took them without complaint. I just said, "Okay." The secret was never that I enjoyed cleaning. The secret was that cleaning gave me something people with real careers didn't get: quiet time, predictable hours, and the ability to listen. After midnight, offices talk. Not with voices, but with paper left on printers, with whiteboards that still had numbers on them, with calendars that said when contracts were up. And I had a habit, even before I understood what it meant, of noticing patterns. When the third floor law firm replaced all their chairs in 1 week, I knew a big settlement came in. When the 11th floor marketing agency stopped stocking their fancy espresso pods, I knew they were cutting costs. When a suite went dark for 2 months and then suddenly got new carpet, I knew a lease had flipped. I didn't steal. I didn't photograph anything. I didn't need to. I had something better: curiosity and patience. The first time I bought a stock, it was $20 worth of a boring index fund through an app I downloaded during my dinner break. My coworker Linda laughed and said, "Girl, you think you're going to be a Wall Street wolf with 20 bucks?" "No," I said. "I'm thinking I'm going to be annoying with consistency." I started doing what rich people do, except without the rich part. Every payday, I split my money like a recipe: rent, food, bus pass, emergency fund, and a slice for investing, even when it was small enough to feel like a joke. What my family didn't understand was that I wasn't chasing luxury. I was chasing ownership. Marcus would come home on holidays and drop words like tort and fiduciary into conversation like coins in a tip jar. My mother would light up like he'd brought her a diamond. She'd ask him about internships and his professors and the networking events he attended. She'd look at me like she couldn't remember my major. One Thanksgiving, she actually said, "Danny, can you bring out the trash? You're so good at that stuff." Marcus laughed into his wine. I smiled and carried the trash out. Outside, the cold air hit my face and made my eyes water, and I told myself something in my head that felt like a promise. Someday, they'll stop laughing. They'll stop because they'll have to. It wasn't revenge like in movies. I didn't want them ruined. I wanted them corrected. I wanted reality to sit down at that folding table and eat with them. The pivot came in year 3. I was cleaning the executive floor late when I saw 2 men in suits standing near the elevator, speaking in that urgent whisper people use when money is bleeding. I was pushing my cart, head down, invisible the way my job trained me to be. One of them said, "If we miss the refinance window, we lose the building." The other said, "No one's buying commercial right now. The rates." "Don't say rates," the first snapped. "We need a private buyer, someone quiet, someone who can close." My hand tightened on the mop handle, not because I wanted their panic, because I recognized an opportunity. I didn't have millions, but I had something else that's almost as powerful: the ability to read fine print, and the discipline to wait. Over the next few weeks, I started paying closer attention to public records. I learned which documents were public, which were not. I learned how to look up deeds, liens, LLC filings. I learned the difference between ownership and management. I learned that buildings, like families, can look stable while the foundation is cracking. And I learned Valenrow Plaza wasn't as untouchable as it pretended to be. Around that time, Marcus called me for the first time in months. Not to ask how I was. To ask for money. "Just a loan," he said. "I'm between clerkship paychecks. Mom's stressed. I told her you could help." He said it like it was natural. Like I was an ATM that also cleaned toilets. I stared at my phone, thinking of the folding table, the trash, the laugh into the wine. Then I said, "Send me your budget. I'll look at it." He paused. I could hear his pride bristle. "My budget?" "Yeah," I said calmly. "Receipts, income, expenses. If I'm lending money, I'm lending smart." He didn't like that tone. The tone that sounded like authority. But he sent it, because even people who look down on you still expect you to catch them when they fall. I opened his spreadsheet on my cracked laptop and started reading. Not like a sister, like an investor. And in the background, like a slow drumbeat I couldn't ignore anymore, the words from the executive floor replayed in my mind. "We need a private buyer, someone quiet, someone who can close." I wasn't quiet because I was weak. I was quiet because I was building something. And I was close. Marcus's budget told me more about him than any graduation speech ever could. He listed appearance, like it was a utility, suit tailoring, haircuts every 10 days, dry cleaning, a monthly fee for a co-working space he used for the vibe. He had student loan payments he called temporary, as if debt could be embarrassed into leaving. He also had one line item that made my thumb stop scrolling. Client entertainment. It wasn't the amount. It was the frequency. Several charges clustered around the same place. Sable and Stone. The kind of downtown restaurant with no prices on the menu because the price is supposed to be your pride. I toggled between his spreadsheet and my own notes. If Marcus was spending that kind of money, while between clerkship paychecks, he wasn't between anything. He was sinking. I called him the next day while I sat in my car in the employee parking lot at Valenrow, the engine off, the winter air fogging the windshield. He answered on the third ring, like he'd been waiting for me to cave. "So?" he said. "You gonna help or what?" "I'm going to ask questions," I replied. He laughed. "Danny, it's not that serious. It's just a loan." "I'm not a bank," I said. "And even banks ask for documents." There was a beat of silence. I could hear the slight shift in his breathing, the part where he tried to decide if he was offended or threatened. "I need 5,000, he finally said, lowering his voice. "I'm fine. It's just my firm put me on a case, and it's a big one. I need to look like I belong. Send me the case name." "You don't need that." "I do," I said. "Because if you can afford to buy image, you can afford to sell me the truth." He exhaled sharply. It's a client intake. Nothing official yet. Then you don't need 5,000, I said. You need a conversation with your landlord and an apology to your credit card company. Are you seriously lecturing me? He snapped. No, I said, calm. I'm reading what you sent me. He hung up. I expected the guilt to creep in afterward. The family-trained reflex of, you should have been nicer. You should have helped. You should have made it easy. But I felt something else instead. Relief. Because boundaries are quiet, and I'd been living in noise. 2 hours later, my mom called. Her number flashed like a warning light. I picked up anyway. Marcus says you refused to help him, she said without hello. I asked for details, I corrected. You asked for details because you think you're better than him now, she said. Because you have your little job and your little money, and you think you can judge. He's a lawyer, Danny. He's building a future. I stared at the steering wheel, my knuckles pale against the textured leather. My car was used. It had a dent in the rear bumper that I never fixed because dents don't affect the engine. My mother would have taken that as proof I was failing. I said, he sent me a budget. It's not sustainable. He's networking, she insisted. That's what successful people do. Successful people don't need their little sister to float them, I replied. Her voice sharpened. Don't be smug. Just because you push a mop around some fancy building doesn't mean you understand how the real world works. I let her words settle. Not because they hurt, because they clarified. She still thought my work was about a mop. She had no idea what I'd been mopping up. When I got back inside Valenrow that night, I didn't go straight to my cart. I went to the building's bulletin board near the loading dock where notices were posted. Maintenance schedules, contractor approvals, and sometimes, when management got careless, the names of vendors and project numbers. There, pinned under a yellow magnet, was a notice about refinance coordination and a list of departments. I didn't photograph it. I didn't need to. I wrote down the company name from the letterhead. Then, on my break, I sat in the empty cafeteria and looked it up on my phone. The company was a commercial loan servicer. Not the bank itself, but the kind of firm that handles the messy middle, which meant there was a file somewhere, a timeline, a deadline. And if someone said, refinance window, there was a date. That date mattered. In the days that followed, I became a student again. I went to the county recorder's website and pulled up the deed history for Valenrow Plaza. I learned which LLC technically held the title. I traced it backward like a family tree. I wrote down the registered agent's name. I searched the business filings and found where the mailing address changed over the years. I didn't do this because I wanted to buy a skyscraper overnight. I did it because I wanted to know what it took to buy one. The numbers were big, obviously. Too big for a janitor with an index fund. But then I started noticing other numbers. The kind that hide in the margins. A lien from a contractor dispute that got released. A UCC filing. A new debt instrument recorded in the same month the executive floor had felt tense. Patterns. And then, one night at 2 a.m., while I was emptying the trash in Suite 2801, I saw something that made my stomach go very still. A printed email chain in the shred bin. Not shredded yet. Just tossed, folded, careless. I shouldn't have read it. I know what people want me to say, but I did read it. Because it had the building's name on it. Because it had the words, distressed sale, and quiet buyer, and Marcus Halden in the same paragraph. Marcus's last name, the one he wore like a crown. I froze, paper trembling between my gloves. Why was my brother's name in an email about the building's potential sale? I took the chain home in my pocket, flattened and hidden beneath my spare uniform shirt. In my apartment, I laid it on my kitchen table like evidence, and read it again under a brighter light. It wasn't signed by Marcus. It was about him. A partner at a law firm was recommending him for a client-facing meeting, calling him hungry and presentable. The client was described as connected to the ownership transition. Ownership transition. My chest tightened. Marcus wasn't just asking for money because he was broke. He was trying to buy access. And if he was being positioned for an ownership transition, then something bigger was happening behind the glass walls I cleaned every night. I opened a new document on my laptop and titled it Valenrow. Then I created folders. public records, vendor names, timeline, debt filings, people, and, because I could feel the story tightening like a noose around my family, I made one more. Marcus. I didn't know yet what I would do with what I was finding. But I knew this. If my brother was about to walk into a meeting with the kind of people who moved buildings around like chess pieces, he wasn't prepared. And my mother, with her worship of titles, would push him forward anyway. They thought I was just cleaning floors. They didn't realize I was collecting receipts off them. I didn't sleep much after I found that email chain. It sat in my desk drawer like a live wire. Every time I walked past it, I could feel it humming. Marcus Halden. Ownership transition. Quiet buyer. The next night at Valenrow, I wore my normal uniform and my normal face. The trick to moving through wealthy spaces is to be exactly what they expect. I pushed my cart onto the executive floor like always, nodding at the security guard who never remembered my name. He was new, not the usual guy. Evening, he said, glancing at my badge. Evening? I replied, then slowed my pace just enough to read the visitor sign, in clipboard on his desk as I passed. I didn't lean. I didn't crane my neck. I just let my eyes skim. Two names jumped out. Marcus Halden. 9 a.m. Friday. And above it, Calder Wren. 8:30 a.m. Friday. I knew Calder Wren. Not personally. But I knew the name the way you know the name of a storm that keeps showing up on forecasts. Wren Capital. The firm rumored to be quiet, but not kind. The kind of private equity group that bought buildings by buying problems first. They didn't flip houses. They flipped entire blocks. My pulse stayed steady because I'd trained it to. But inside, something clicked into place. Friday wasn't just a meeting. It was the meeting. I went home and opened the Valenrow folder on my laptop. Then I opened the county records again, searching the name of the LLC that held the deed. The ownership entity was Valenrow Holdings, LLC, registered in Delaware, which was like a magic trick. It made the owner look like no one. But there were still footprints. There were still filings. I pulled up the last recorded deed transfer date, then the mortgage record, then a notice of default that had been cured, months ago, quietly. The building had been bleeding. Someone had been pressing gauze on it, hoping it would heal before anyone saw. I wrote a timeline on a yellow legal pad. Refinance window mentioned. Early winter. Ownership transition email. Recent. Marcus scheduled. Calder Wren scheduled. Friday. My mind moved the pieces. If the building was distressed, a quiet buyer would want leverage. If Marcus was being sent in, he wasn't being sent because he was brilliant. He was being sent because he was disposable and eager. He was the shiny object they dangled in front of my mother and used like a tool. And if my brother was walking into a room with sharks, he was going to mistake their smiles for respect. I didn't want to save him because he deserved saving. I wanted to save myself from the collateral damage of his ego and my mother's worship. So I set a trap. Not a dramatic one, a practical one. Thursday afternoon, I used a personal day from Valenrow. I put on a plain blouse and slacks and went downtown to the county clerk's office. I paid for certified copies of the filings I'd already read online, the deed history, the mortgage instrument, the LLC registration printout, and the notice of default cure. Paper looks different when it has a stamp. It stops being something you found online and starts being evidence. Then I went to a notary and had my own documents stamped too. My investment account statements, my LLC articles of organization, and a letter from a small regional bank I'd been working with quietly for months. I didn't have full financing, not for the whole building. But I didn't need the whole building. I needed a seat at the table. By midnight, I was back at Valenrow in uniform. Linda found me in the supply closet, staring at my cart like it was an enemy. "You okay, Danny?" she asked, tying her hair back. "I'm fine," I said. "Just busy upstairs tomorrow." She snorted. "Always busy. Those suits treat this place like a temple." I smiled faintly. "Tomorrow, they might find out it's not." On Friday, I arrived early. Not in uniform. I walked into the lobby at 7:45 a.m., wearing a charcoal blazer. I bought secondhand and had tailored with my own hands and a YouTube video. My hair was pulled into a low knot. No heavy makeup. No flashy jewelry, just clean lines. Security stopped me. "Can I help you?" the guard asked, eyes scanning me for permission to exist. "Yes," I said. "I have a meeting." "With who?" he asked automatically. I gave him a name. He checked the list, frowned, then looked up again. "You're not on the—" "I'm early," I said gently, like I was doing him a favor by being patient. "Could you call upstairs and let them know Danny Reyes is here?" He hesitated, then picked up the phone because my tone wasn't pleading. It was normal. "Entitled. In the soft way wealth is entitled." While he spoke, I watched the elevators. At 8:12 a.m., Marcus walked in. He looked good. He always looked good. He had the kind of face that cameras liked, and he knew it. He wore a navy suit with a tie that screamed expensive. He carried a briefcase he definitely couldn't afford. He didn't see me at first. He was too busy soaking in the lobby like it was a stage. Then his gaze landed on me. His expression did a strange little stutter. Confusion, then irritation, then the quick mask of superiority. He marched over. "What are you doing here?" he demanded in a low voice, like I'd wandered into a courtroom by mistake. "I have a meeting," I said. He laughed under his breath. "With who? Facilities?" I looked at him, calm. "Why are you here, Marcus?" His jaw tightened. "I'm meeting someone important, someone who could change everything for me. Don't embarrass me." My mother's voice echoed in my head. "Don't ruin the vibe," I said. "If you're meeting someone important, you should know who owns the room you're about to walk into." He scoffed. "I know exactly what I'm doing." That was the problem. He always thought that. At 8:27 a.m., a man in a gray suit entered the lobby with two assistants. Calder Wren was taller than I expected, with eyes that didn't blink much. He didn't look around like a tourist. He looked around like a buyer. His gaze slid over Marcus, like Marcus was furniture. Then it landed on me and paused. He walked directly toward me. Marcus's smugness faltered. "Miss Reyes?" Calder asked. "Yes," I said. His assistants looked relieved, like they'd been worried I wouldn't show. Calder extended his hand. "Thank you for coming early. Shall we go up?" Marcus stared like someone had unplugged him. "Wait," he said, stepping forward. "I'm Marcus Halden. I have an appointment at 9. Calder looked at him politely, the way you look at someone holding up a line. "Yes," he said. "You're the junior associate. You'll join us after." Junior associate, not future partner, not star lawyer. Accessory. Marcus's face flushed. I didn't smile. I didn't need to. The moment was already doing the work. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime. Calder gestured for me to enter first. As I stepped inside, I caught my brother's eyes. His were wide with something he'd never aimed at me before. Fear. "Danny," he whispered, like he was trying to decide if this was real. I looked at him once, steady and plain. "I told you," I said. "I read what you send me." The doors closed, and for the first time in my life, I was going up while my brother stayed in the lobby, staring at the ceiling like it might finally explain what he'd missed. The executive elevator opened onto the 29th floor, with the kind of silence that feels paid for. Carpet so thick it muted footsteps. Walls the color of fresh paper. A reception desk that looked like sculpture. A woman behind it stood when she saw Calder Wren, then looked at me and paused like her brain had to reroute. Calder didn't pause. He said, "We're here." And I realized something important about power. It doesn't announce itself. It just moves. And everyone else adjusts. We were led into a conference room with a view of the river and a table long enough to make people feel small. A pitcher of water already sweating on a tray. Folders neatly placed. My name printed on a tent card. D. Reyes. Calder took the seat at the far end. He nodded at the chair to his right. "Please," he said to me. I sat. Across the table, a man in a blue suit shifted uncomfortably, pretending not to stare. He had the look of building management, the kind of person who attends meetings for owners who don't like meetings. He introduced himself as Eli from Valenrow Holdings. But he said it like it was a family name. Calder's assistant slid a packet toward me. "Draft term sheet," she said. Calder leaned back. Before we begin, I want to be clear about why you're here, Miss Reyes. I know why I'm here, I replied. He watched me, assessing. Most people in your position would be excited, loudly excited. They'd talk about dreams. I prefer closing, I said. A faint, almost amused shift crossed his face. Good. Then we can speak plainly. He tapped the folder. Valenro Plaza needs liquidity. The current debt structure is fragile. The refinance window closes in 30 days. Ren Capital can purchase the building at a discount. Assume the debt, inject capital, and renovate. We do it quickly, quietly. I nodded once. Eli cleared his throat. To be fair, it's not fragile. It's temporary. Calder didn't look at him. Temporary is a synonym for fragile when interest rates rise. He turned back to me. You have access to a portion of this building through a contract relationship. You're also, based on the documents you sent, a capital partner in a smaller vehicle. You want leverage. So here's the question. His fingers steepled. What do you want? I took out my own folder, not the term sheet. Mine, the certified copies with stamps, the public records, the timeline I'd built. I laid them on the table one at a time, neat as a surgeon. I want a minority equity stake in the acquisition entity, I said, with voting rights. And I want a seat on the oversight committee for tenant retention and renovations. Eli blinked like I'd spoken another language. Calder's assistant's eyebrows rose, then she quickly smoothed her face. Calder studied me. That's ambitious. It's precise, I said. Ambition is what people call it when they don't want to admit it makes sense. Calder's gaze dropped to my documents. He scanned the stamps, the dates, the names. Then he looked at me again. You're asking to be protected, he said. I'm asking to be included, I corrected. Protected is what you do for someone you don't respect. Included is what you do for a partner. Silence stretched. Then Calder nodded once. Slow. You've done your homework, he said. I clean here, I replied. I notice everything. His mouth twitched at that. Almost a smile, but not warm, more like recognition. The door opened at exactly 9. Marcus walked in. He came in with that confident stride he practiced. He had a portfolio under his arm and a smile preloaded. Then he saw me, not standing by the wall, not waiting with coffee, sitting in a chair, at the table, with my name on a tent card like I belonged. His smile fell apart in real time. His portfolio slipped slightly in his grip. Calder's assistant said, Mr. Halden, welcome. Please take a seat. Marcus didn't sit. He looked at Calder, then at Eli, then back at me, like he was searching for a prank camera. What is she doing here? He blurted. His voice echoed off the glass. I didn't flinch. Calder said, Miss Reyes is part of the ownership conversation. Marcus laughed, but it was thin and panicked. That's not funny. Calder's eyes cooled. I'm not joking. Marcus's gaze snapped to me. Danny, tell him, you work here. I do, I said, in more ways than you understand. He took a step closer to the table. This is my meeting. I was sent here for optics, I said quietly. For presentation. For the part where the client likes the idea of a young lawyer who looks eager. His face went red. You don't know what you're talking about. I opened my folder and slid one paper toward him. The certified copy of the Notice of Default Cure. Then another. The LLC printout with registered agent information. Then the email chain I'd found, printed and highlighted, with names visible. Marcus's eyes flicked over the page, and his throat bobbed. You went through my... he started. I went through what you threw away, I corrected. And what you sent me. Calder watched the exchange like he was observing a negotiation he didn't need to intervene in. Eli looked like he wanted to vanish. Marcus swallowed and tried to regain control, straightening his shoulders. Okay, fine. So you found paperwork. That doesn't mean... It means you came here thinking you were the person they'd respect, I said. But you're not the one with leverage. His mouth opened, then closed. He turned to Calder desperately. Sir, I represent... You represent your firm, Calder cut in. And your firm represents us. That's all. Marcus's eyes glistened with humiliation, but he tried to weaponize it into anger. Why are you doing this to me? I held his gaze steadily. I'm not doing anything to you, I said. You did it to yourself. You just assumed I'd be invisible. Calder's assistant slid a new page toward me. We can revise the voting rights structure. Possibly a board observer seat with… No, I said. A seat. Voting rights. Put it in writing. Calder leaned forward, elbows on the table. If we give you that, what do we get? I didn't glance at Marcus. I didn't need to. The trap wasn't about embarrassing him. That was just the byproduct. I said, you get someone who knows the building from the inside. Someone the tenants trust. Someone who can flag issues before they become headlines. Someone who doesn't need to posture. Calder held my gaze for a long moment. Then he nodded. Done, he said. Marcus made a small sound, like air leaving a tire. And in that moment, the hierarchy my mother worshipped cracked. Not in a dramatic shatter. In a clean line, like a glass pane finally showing the flaw that's always been there. After the meeting, as we stood in the hallway, Marcus grabbed my arm. His grip was tight. You're going to tell Mom you're not the owner, he hissed. You're not going to let her think. I looked down at his hand on my sleeve. Let go, I said softly. He didn't. So I did what I always did when someone forced me into a corner. I used receipts. I pulled out my phone and tapped play on a recording I'd started the moment he walked into the room. The law in our state allowed one-party consent. I'd checked weeks ago. I didn't guess. I didn't hope. My own voice filled the hallway speaker, calm and clear. For optics. For presentation. For the part where the client likes the idea of a young lawyer who looks eager. Marcus's grip loosened like his fingers had been burned. I leaned close, voice low. You've been living off my silence, I said. That ends today. I didn't call my mother that day. Not because I was afraid of her reaction. Because I wanted the truth to arrive the way it always had in my life. Through something physical, undeniable, stamped. A week after the meeting, the lobby of Valenrow Plaza changed. It wasn't a renovation yet. It was a reintroduction. The old sign near the revolving doors that read Valenrow Holdings came down quietly overnight. In its place, a temporary plaque appeared, clean and modern, with a name that made the front desk staff sit a little straighter. Valenrow Plaza, managed by Wren Capital Partners. In partnership with Reyes Equity Group, my last name didn't scream. It didn't need to. It sat there, like it had always belonged. I watched people notice it. Tenants walked in holding coffee and slowed their step. Delivery drivers squinted at it. One of the security guards actually leaned in, reading it twice, as if repetition might change the letters. Linda called me from the service elevator, breathless. Danny, she said, voice cracking with excitement and suspicion. Girl, why is your name on the building? I told you, I said, pushing my cart like normal. Tomorrow they might find out it's not a temple. She laughed in disbelief. Are you serious? I'm serious, I replied, but don't tell anyone yet. Let it travel. News in buildings like this doesn't spread like a headline. It spreads like perfume. One person notices, then everyone pretends they didn't, but their eyes keep drifting back. 3 days later, my mother noticed. Not because she came downtown. She'd never made time to see where I worked. She noticed because Marcus stormed into her house with his phone out, furious, and shoved the picture in her face like it was a crime scene. My mother called me immediately after. This time she said hello. Danny, she said, voice shaky. Marcus says, your name is on a building. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open, the revised term sheet on the screen, my signature already drying on the page. Calder Wren's legal team moved quickly when they wanted to. Yes, I said. A long inhale on the other end. Why would your name be on a building? She asked, like she was trying to solve a riddle that offended her. Because I own part of it, I replied. Silence snapped tight. Then she laughed. Not the warm kind. The reflex kind. The laugh she used when reality didn't match her script. You can't, she said. Danny, be serious. I said calmly. I'm on the oversight committee too. I heard a sound like her hand covering her mouth. How? She whispered. I didn't launch into a speech. I didn't beg her to understand. I gave her receipts. I can email you the documents, I said. Operating agreement, capital contribution schedule, voting rights structure. Everything is signed and notarized. You, you're telling me you did this while you were cleaning? She said, voice thinning with confusion and something else. Fear. Because if I did this, it meant her whole story about me was wrong. And if her story was wrong, then what else had she been wrong about? I did it while you were laughing, I said. That line landed like a heavy object. She tried to regain control the way she always did, by making it about Marcus. But Marcus is the lawyer, she said quickly. He should be. He's employed, I said. I'm invested. She made a small choking sound, half offense, half grief. What does this mean for us? She asked. There it was. Not, I'm proud of you. Not, I'm sorry. Not, I treated you like furniture, and now I realize you were building the house. Just, what does this mean for us? I let my breath out slowly. It means you can't talk to me like I'm disposable anymore, I said. It means you don't get to use my work as a joke and then use my success as a lifeboat. Her voice sharpened. So you're punishing me? No, I corrected. I'm protecting myself. She went quiet again. I could picture her in her kitchen, phone pressed to her ear, eyes darting around like she needed a witness. Then she said, Marcus says you humiliated him. I looked at the term sheet again. The ink, the clear lines, the parts that couldn't be argued with. I didn't humiliate him, I said. He walked into a room expecting to be important because you trained him to believe titles make you important. That's not my fault. He's struggling, she insisted, softer now. He needs help. I was ready for that too. I'll help, I said. But it will be on paper. What? She asked, startled. I'll cover his minimum loan payments for 3 months, I said. Directly to the servicer, not to him. In exchange, he signs an agreement. No more using my name, my work, or my money as a family resource without my consent. And he attends financial counseling sessions I pay for. If he refuses, he figures it out himself. My mother sounded offended by the structure, as if structure was cruelty. You're treating him like a client, she snapped. No, I said. I'm treating him like an adult. She didn't answer for a moment. Then, quietly, she asked, what about me? I almost laughed, not because it was funny, because it was predictable. What about you? I asked. She cleared her throat. I didn't know. You never told me. I stared at the wall, thinking of the folding table, thinking of the trash, thinking of the way she'd told me my mop bucket smell would ruin the vibe. I tried to exist in front of you, I said. You were too busy looking past me. That was the first time I heard my mother's voice crack. Danny, she whispered. I didn't mean. I know, I said. That's the problem. You didn't mean me at all. After the call, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt clean, like I'd finally scrubbed something that had been staining my life for years. A month later, Valenro's first renovation plan rolled out. Tenants got new HVAC schedules, new lighting plans, and a hotline for maintenance. I insisted on it. I insisted on transparency because I knew what it felt like to be invisible and blamed when things broke. Linda got promoted to facilities coordinator. I put it in writing too. She earned it. Marcus didn't take my offer at first. He sulked. He blamed me. He tried to tell relatives I was pretending to be an owner. So, I sent them the operating agreement. Stamped, signed, boring, as truth. It shut everyone up. Eventually, he signed the agreement I offered. He didn't apologize with his mouth, but he did it with his pen. That was enough for now. Paper is patient. It holds people to the version of themselves they promised to be. My mother came downtown 2 months later. She stood in the lobby under the chandelier and looked up like she expected the ceiling to confirm her beliefs. When she saw the plaque, she froze. Reyes Equity Group. Her mouth opened slightly. Her eyes shimmered. She turned to me in a way that felt unfamiliar, like she was meeting me for the first time, without the story she'd written. I didn't know you could do this, she said. I could, I replied. You just didn't want to believe it. She nodded, swallowing hard. I'm sorry, she said finally. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't poetic. But it was real. And I didn't give her a hug right away. I made her sit with it. Because my life wasn't a moment anymore. It was an operating agreement. And the terms had changed.